promise for a creamed cake. So we're gonna make a banana cake, and it uses the creaming method. I have all the mise en place here. I have our butter, our sugar, our flour, baking powder, baking soda, and salt. I have the mashed bananas right here. I have buttermilk, eggs, and our pans. So first thing is to preheat your oven. I've got our oven set at 350 degrees. We need to prep our pans. I'm going to make 2 6-inch layers and then a few cupcakes. So to grease this pan, I have shortening on a piece of paper, and I am going to just make a thin film all around the perimeter, all around the insides and on the bottom. And then I'm taking a pre-cut piece of parchment paper and I'm dropping it into the bottom of the pan, giving it a little push around to make sure that it stands firm. So it's in there, it's good. You can, if you want, just run a little bit of shortening over the top of the parchment, not completely necessary, but it works well. Somewhere I hid, I forgot where I put it. Let me see. Yes, I've got it. I just want to show you. This is a half sheet of parchment, folded in half and into quarters. And this is the perfect size for making 6-inch rounds. So if you're making a 6-inch cake, you fold your parchment 4 times, trace the bottom of the pan, and then cut, and you'll have 4 6-inch circles if you need them. So that's how we prep the pans. So we're ready to roll. Here's the butter. What's important? That we can press this butter. We can pinch it so that it bends. We don't want it too soft. We don't want it too hard. This butter is perfect. This is a lot of butter. 340 grams of butter going into the bottom of the mixer bowl, and I fitted the mixer bowl with the paddle attachment. I'm going to start to mix this just until it creams a little bit. And you can see it's nice and soft, but not melty. I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to add the sugar. Okay, so I've combined the sugar and the butter together. They have creamed for about a minute, which is clearly not enough. Remember, the term that we talked about was light and fluffy. This is definitely not light and fluffy. However, I'm going to stop, scrape down the sides, and continue to mix until I've achieved that light and fluffy texture. So you can see this is still rather dense, and this is a lot of butter. That's why this cake tastes so dang good. All right, so we're going back, and I'm going to continue to mix this, and the next time you see me, we'll have light and fluffy. So what we have here is a mixture that is definitely light and fluffy. We've had about 3, maybe 4 minutes of total mixing time. I'm going to stop, scrape down the sides of the bowl, and as you can see, we've lightened the entire mixture up. It's no longer yellow colored. Actually, scraping it down to the very bottom is pretty key. And then we're going to move on to mixing the rest of the ingredients in the proper steps. So step 1, as you know, is to cream the butter and sugar until it's light and fluffy, and we've done a darn good job of that. The second step is to, what is it? Add our eggs. So I have 2 large farm eggs. Look how dark those yolks are. I'm giving them a little bit of a scramble because my favorite technique is to drizzle. This is important that you get this. As I drizzle these in, I want you to see how the butter absorbs the egg. This is the emulsion. If the egg stays on the outside of the butter, then what we have is curdling. So we have to make sure that the butter absorbs the egg, and it has done that. So now I can add a little teeny bit more. So right now, if you look in the bowl, it hasn't absorbed it yet. You can see the egg on the outside of the butter. We want it to get absorbed, and it is. So I am going to turn this mixer off. because it never hurts to scrape down your sides and bottom as frequently as you can. I'm like a contortionist here. I'm going to scrape it down all the way to make sure that everything is getting well blended. This recipe, by the way, is right in your packet. And if you've mismanaged bananas like I do, this is a great way to use them. Okay, back on for the last of the egg. You want to make sure that egg gets emulsified with the butter. You can see that happening. And a little bit more, kind of drizzling it in. This was just 2 eggs, but I prefer this technique because then we make sure that we emulsify. These eggs are so bright yellow, we can thank Wing Road Farm for that. All right, last of the egg is in. I want you to look in that bowl really carefully and see how smooth and creamy that mixture is. Looks like ice cream. Perfect. We're gonna scrape it off the beater. My poor old mixer here is kind of on its last leg, I think. I have another one, but it's bigger and it's not good for this. All right, scraping this down one more time. Notice how I take the bowl off because I want to be sure that I get to the bottom and I don't leave any bits unturned. So I'm just gonna give it one quick whirl. Perfect. Okay, so now our next step. I've got cake flour in this container. I have baking powder, baking soda, and salt in this little bowl, and I'm gonna pour them all together, and I'm gonna sift this onto this piece of parchment paper, which is blowing from the fan of my oven. So I'm gonna tap, 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 tap. And if you actually look, you can see that it totally is worth the sifting because we've got lumpy flour. So just keep tapping the side of your sifter or your strainer until you have pushed all of the dry ingredients through. I like to use my hand, works quicker. Tap, 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 tap. Got it, got it, got it. We get rid of these 2 things. And so now we have our dry ingredients. Our liquid ingredients for this recipe is mashed bananas and buttermilk. And I'm gonna combine the 2 together with another little scramble. And so our liquid in this case is this banana buttermilk mixture. Now if you don't have buttermilk, you can use regular milk and add, this was 56 grams of buttermilk, but you could use 56 grams of regular milk and add like a 1/4 teaspoon of white vinegar, lemon juice to it, just enough to acidulate it so that it works, balances out the alkali of the baking soda. So now, remember, we start with the dry and end with the dry, and we add these 2 ingredients alternately. So what I'm gonna do is hope the fan doesn't blow a big mess, but I'm gonna lift this paper up and I'm going to drop about 1/3 of the dry ingredients into the bowl, and then because I've done this so many times before, I'm going to take a towel and wrap it around the bowl because my old mixer only has 1 speed and it seems to be high, and I don't want it to fly out. Okay, I think I got it. So if you come over and take a peek in this bowl, you can see that our dry ingredients are in there. I'm going for half of the wet. Just a little bit of mixing, another 1/3 of the dry. I think we'll be okay this time, but just in case, I'll give it a quick wrap. Got it, got it. The remaining liquid, so the liquid's going in 2 parts, the dry was going in 3. I'm gonna add the rest of this liquid, and I'm just, we're just kind of eyeballing it. You don't really have to measure it. In. It's blended, and now I'm gonna take the last bit of dry, add that, wrap the towel around again. Oops. See a little flour trying to fly out. All right. So I'm going to let you take a peek at this mixture. I am going to knock it off the spatula, and then I'm going to scrape this down really well, just so that we get all that flour and leavener and salt all perfectly blended in. And the whole purpose of that technique is to prevent gluten development. So we don't want a tough cake, we want a nice tender cake, and that's how we do it. So I am gonna scrape this out of the bowl. I'm gonna pan it, scale it into the pans, and scoop it into the muffin tins, and you'll see the finished product. Okay, so I'm scaling 350 grams of batter in each of these 6-inch pans. The cake is written in your packet for 8-inch pans, and it would make 2 8-inch cakes. However, I wanted to make some cupcakes, so I'm making 2 smaller layers, and then I'll use the rest of the batter and make cupcakes. So once you have the batter in the pan, creamed cakes are really stiff. The batter is dense. I mean, you can see it's very thick. You can't just put it in the oven like this. You have to take an offset spatula. This is one of your best tools, a little 4 or 5-inch offset, and just spin the cake around so that you even it out. I know sometimes people bang them, and to me that's ridiculous. You work so hard to incorporate all that air. Why would you want to bang the air out? So there's our 2 6-inch cakes, and then I'm going to make a few muffins. And I like to use a disher or a scoop. Some people call them ice cream scoops. I know it as a disher. I think this is going to be the perfect size. This is a number 16 scoop, and I'm going to drop 1 scoop into the papers, and I'll have a few banana cupcakes. I scoop and press it against the side so that it's perfectly level, being careful to keep it off the paper so that I don't make a mess. And it appears I'm going to be able to make at least 1 more. And of course, I would never throw this batter away. I would just add a little more to each one of the cakes, or try to squeeze out a second, which I think I'm gonna get. Let's see. There we go. And I think I gotta grab 1 more paper, and I'll make 1 more, so that'll be what? 2, 4, 6 banana cupcakes and a 2-layer banana cake. And that's how you make a creamed cake. Thanks. Okay, so both cakes are out. They've sat in the pans for about 10 minutes, and now we wanna get this last one out of the pan. We do this just like we did with the egg foam, offset spatula or butter type knife, spin around the entire perimeter, pick the pan up, spread your hand, give it a little tap, and the cake comes out. Put your hand over the parchment paper and flip it, and there is your cake. It's out, and now they can fully cool at room temperature and then be turned into a layer cake. These cakes could be split in half, so you could have multiple layers, or you can just stack one on top of the other. I think I'm actually gonna end up freezing these because I can't eat any more sweets. All right, thank you. There's your creamed banana cake.